Welcome to Crime Darkroom. This is where darkness and truth come together to unveil the hidden secrets of historical crimes. I'm Elias Blackwood, and today we're diving into one of the most terrifying and complex criminal cases, a killer whose name has remained alive in the shadows to this day, the man we know as Zodiac. The story of the Zodiac began on a calm December night in 1968. That night, two young people named Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were spending time in their car, surrounded by love, youth, and the oblivion that they would become the first victims of one of history's most dangerous killers. The Zodiac approached them without any warning, drew his gun, and fired. Now imagine a city that prides itself on its security and peace, suddenly facing strange and brutal murders with no apparent reason or motive behind them. But this was only the beginning. The Zodiac was determined to continue his game, revealing a bit more of his dark plan each time. It wasn't long before the Zodiac sent his letters to local newspapers, letters filled with threats and hatred. In each letter, the Zodiac spoke of the crimes he had committed and challenged the police. He said, "If you don't publish my letters, more people will die." These letters were accompanied by strange codes and ciphers. The Zodiac claimed that if someone could decode them, they would uncover his true identity. These messages were like a complex puzzle that, for years, no one was able to fully solve. One of the most famous ciphers is known as the 340 cipher, which had puzzled cryptographers and crime analysts for years. Finally, in 2020, a group managed to decode parts of this cipher, but even this revealed nothing about the Zodiac's true identity. It was as if the Zodiac only wanted to toy with the police and society in his own preferred style. One of the things that made the Zodiac seem so complex was his varied and brutal methods of killing. Each murder had its own distinct style, with no discernible pattern. Sometimes the Zodiac used a gun, and other times a knife. He killed some of his victims in public places and others in the solitude of the night. Another famous case was the lake murder. This one was different from Zodiac's other crimes. This time, Zodiac appeared in a mask and black clothing and approached a young couple. They thought they had come to the lake for a peaceful, relaxing day, but suddenly fell into the trap of this ruthless killer. Zodiac attacked them with a knife, and after killing them, he drew his famous symbol, a circle, with a cross on their car with their blood. These murders were horrifying, but what made the Zodiac even more terrifying was his indifference to the pain and suffering of his victims. He didn't care who his victims were. All that mattered to him was that others feared him and that no one could capture him. If you had lived in California during those years, you would probably have heard the name Zodiac in the newspapers and on television every day. People didn't leave their homes, the police patrolled more each night, and a deep and pervasive fear had spread throughout the community. The Zodiac was not an ordinary killer. He enjoyed the fear he instilled in people's hearts. It was as if each murder and each message was just a part of his larger game. Some even believed that the Zodiac committed his crimes not for money or revenge, but for his own pleasure. The police quickly launched an extensive investigation and tried to gather any clues that might lead to the Zodiac's identity. Hundreds of people were interrogated as suspects, and the police used the latest forensic methods for each case. One of the main suspects was Arthur Lee Allen, a man whose acquaintances spoke of his strange and even threatening behavior. The police interrogated him multiple times and even found evidence in his home that could have linked him to the Zodiac. However, in the end, no solid proof was found to confirm that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac. The investigation continued, from fingerprint testing to DNA analysis. But each time they got close to an answer, a new obstacle emerged, diverting the investigation's path. These dead ends only served to keep the Zodiac case open, even decades later. Believe it or not, the Zodiac, even after disappearing, left a significant impact on popular culture. His story inspired many films, books, and even video games. It was as if people couldn't let go of this great mystery. The Zodiac had become a kind of legend, someone who emerged from the darkness, instilled terror, and then vanished without a trace. We've reached the end of this episode of Crime Darkroom, but the end of the Zodiac's story remains unknown. He may still be alive, or perhaps he died years ago. What is certain is that the name Zodiac will forever remain in the shadows. Join me, Elias Blackwood, as we walk through the darkness, where sometimes the truth is darker than crime.